Hi, everybody. Mo Davis, the tribeless outcast. Um, this whole scenario gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit what my name is all about, the tribeless outcast. Why did I change? Where did I pick this name essentially for myself, or why this handle? So I'm a first generation born Canadian, which means my parents immigrated, both of them from Egypt. My mom was a very white passing Macedonian descendant, and my father was a very not white passing, um, dark North African man. And the truth is, neither one of them was white enough to pass for white. So it left me populationless, I guess, here. And even though I was partially raised in Egypt and still have most of my family there, culturally, I am outside enough to be able to identify the things I appreciate of that culture, but know that I, don't really have a place among this culture, um, which really gives me a different perspective even than people who are Egyptian talking about the issue of this new documentary by Jada Pickett's Myth. Um, anyway, stealing the heritage of Egyptians and claiming it as essentially um, Afrocentric heritage, which it is not. Um, is it becoming a little bit racist? Possibly. I mean, there is unfortunately the truth that there is shadeism and racism among North Africans that comes from an elitist point of view, which was groomed through colonization by white people into North Africa. Um, and there's a lot of ugly coming out. Like I've seen a lot of homophobic comments. I've seen a lot of things going towards Mr. Owen or Mr. Owens, who was commenting um, against the discussion with with Bessim Youssef. But the fact is, Owens should not be subjected to homophobia. But Owens had no business talking about what he was talking about. Um, the fact that he used a term that I consider to be extremely discriminatory, which is racial ambiguity or racially ambiguous or whatever the hell that term wants to be. It's essentially the term used to discredit the culture of anything that is not black, that is racialized but not black. If you're racialized and not black and not clearly Asian or something, then you become quote unquote racially ambiguous. That includes if you're biracial, that includes if you're Latino, Afro Latino. All of those become racially ambiguous identities, apparently, which, discredits our racialization and our experience of being subjected to abusive behavior due to race. He also had no sweet clue what the difference between race and culture was. Um, he legitimately thought that Egyptians and North Africans are black. Even our black North Africans do not look like West Africans. Just like Somalians do not look like Malians, do not look like Ethiopians. Like, Mr. Owens, are you aware that Africa is a continent and that there's just as much diversity amongst us as there are amongst Asian cultures, amongst European cultures? Like, I really think you need to read, and it's really embarrassing. Like, I'm embarrassed for you as a journalist. You should be embarrassed. Um, but I digress. This is not an Owens shaming video. This is an identity claiming video for myself. Um, it's really interesting because, not 48 hours ago, I was reading up on the term racial ambiguity for the first time in my life. And I finally was able to put a finger on what it was that I've been the victim of for so long that allowed the systemic erasure of the torture of racialized non-Black individuals, non-Indigenous individuals in Canada. And for those unaware, there's a lot of systemic abuse to immigrants and racialized people in Canada, but even more to the children of immigrants and even more to immigrants, because immigrants, what you end up having is an entire population of adults with children who cannot defend their children because they are too afraid, because they do not know their rights, and because, frankly, they have been discriminated against so much and gaslit so much that they lose the ability to speak for themselves or their children. Like, we are literally incapacitating an entire generation of parents, which then leads to extremely abused children. Like in my particular case, I was subjected to a lot of systemic violence. Um, by students, within a music school that was run by the Catholic Church. Let's not even go into assuming what may have happened there, because we all know what happened at the residential schools. And as a child of a Muslim family, guess how I was treated? No different. Out of the mouths of people who have experienced residential schools and or their children. Um, And I made my claims long before those stories were made public. I filed my complaints with the Human Rights Commission. So it is documented. Those conversations are documented, that I did not know what had happened to Indigenous people, which is embarrassing because I'm Canadian, being raised on their land. It's all so embarrassing, isn't it? Like, complete side note. And we all know, like, from my trauma in the tub segments, that, there's a lot of trauma babble when you talk about traumatizing childhood violence. But there's always side babbles. But how embarrassing is it that to this day, 2023, we still can't get Indigenous history right? And we still can't reconcile to that properly. Like, I don't need to go to Egypt and point fingers at the, colorism and all that jazz. I can just point fingers at what's down the road. Literally, I live by a reserve and have seen some of the public disrespect of the culture, of the suffering, of so many things. But I digress. All this to say, like, hallelujah, I finally have the vocabulary to express the frustration that I have had being systemically violated and essentially told I don't have a case by white people, only to continue to be systemically violated as an adult with the ability to speak for myself because I'm too racially ambiguous to be seen, more specifically as an Indigenous or Black person, which I'm neither, nor do I want to be, because I'm perfectly happy being authentically myself. But it's so interesting to understand that there's actually a language out there that was designed to discredit and disqualify people like myself from ever being able to obtain justice, but also obtain support. Because if we can't be validated by the number one most recognized minority groups, because they say we're too racially ambiguous, we look white. But at the same time, white people are like, you ain't white. Yeah, no, I'm not white. Then it's just an easy way to never, ever serve people with justice, and never, ever holding ourselves accountable to do better and improve a system that literally, quite frankly, sucks. On all that note, I'm going to end my rant here. I hope I don't get too much hate mail, but I said what I said. It's time we start being authentic about who we are and pick the direction of fixing the problem. Because this divisive rhetoric bullshit that we keep talking about doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter that I'm Egyptian. It's had to matter because it's the only identity I've ever known. But if we could just make it that I'm a human being who deserves basic respect and safety, and that our children deserve nurturing and love, then no other aspect of identity would matter. And it's really a shame that minorities that have the power to stick together choose instead to go apart. And this isn't a jab just at Afrocentrism, it's at all of it.